What is the most ducked up thing that happened in a children's TV show? Too many episodes of Hey Arnold. Like finding out Stoop Kid stayed on his stoop because he was abandoned there and was homeless, but hopelessly waiting for someone to come back for him. How Monkey Man was mentally ill and also homeless. That one where you learn Grandpa and his sister had a lifelong rift because the only good thing in their life as children, their puppy, got killed by a car in front of them, and they each blamed the other. How Lila and her dad ask Waters to keep from being homeless. How the kids on the show routinely get mugged. Or how Mr. Hyan hates Christmas because that's the anniversary of the day he handed his baby daughter off to an American soldier to get her out of the war zone because he wasn't sure they'd survive, then spent the rest of his life working to immigrate to America to try and find her, only having the name of the city to work from, and ended up missing her whole childhood because he was too poor to hire a private investigator, until Helga literally sold the shoes off her feet to hire one to make Arnold happy. Oh, and how Helga is obsessed with Arnold because she grew up neglected by an alcoholic mother and aggressive narcissistic father who only cared about her older sister, and Arnold was literally the first person in her entire life to show her any kindness when, as a preschooler, he offered to share his umbrella because her parents forgot to take her to her first day of preschool and she had to walk in the rain by herself with no coat as a 4-year-old in what we can only assume is New York City. So yeah, that show was supremely jacked up. Hey Arnold was one of those shows that got real in not just plot but emotional consequences. It even got us to relate to the rich kid Lorenzo in how isolating and emotionally empty a privileged life can be. It never shied away from real world things like poverty, trauma, corrupt politics, Mr. Green's run for mayor, or anything that parents tend to hide from the 10-year-olds watching it. A couple of years ago, I started seeing lots of nostalgia threads where people were saying OMG, I never realized Helga's mom was an alcoholic. Hey Arnold was darker than we realized. And I was thinking, wait, some people didn't know that? Then I remembered that I didn't pick up on it either until one day my father watched an episode with me. My dad doesn't believe in hiding things from children. So when he saw Helga's mom asleep in midday, he said, oh, they're saying she drinks too much. Maybe other 90s kids didn't have fathers as honest as mine. I love that. I think more people should be honest with their children. I don't mean traumatize the kid, but just make sure they don't grow up to be so naive/sheltered like I was. Remember when SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs murdered and buried the health inspector? This was a great episode though, doing what Ratatouille could never do. I remember that episode of the Magic School Bus when that ginger dude took off his helmet in space after being told not to and his dome turned to ice or something like that. Spooked me as a kid. Oh yeah, the one where his sister or cousin or something made an appearance. Basically the plot is Arnold's relative visits the school and is skeptical about Mrs. Frizzle. They go to space and the relative is collecting rocks to show to her class. She went to a different school. Once they go to all the planets, her rocks are so heavy that the bus can't go. The relative refuses to get rid of any rocks. Arnold gets fed up with it and takes off his helmet to convince her to go home. The worst part? Mrs. Frizzle doesn't do a thing. Time Lords can care deeply about humans, but also displays chilling behaviors like that. There's this Hey Arnold episode called The Ghost Bride and the story is basically that this lady was madly in love with her fiancé, but was stood up at the altar because he had fallen in love with her sister and married her the very next day. So the lady goes berserk and puts on her wedding dress, gets an axe from her basement, walks to the newlywed couple's home, kills them both in their beds, and when the cops come, she's rocking back and forth in a rocking chair next to the bodies, throwing rice on them, and humming the wedding march. To finish it all off, she immediately jumps out of the window and kills herself. What in the Kentucky Fried Duck? There was a very special anti-drug episode of the 80s cartoon Brave Stare. In this episode, a couple of kids get hooked on a new drug. At the end of the episode, one of the kids died from an overdose. 30+ years later, and I'm not sure how many children's shows even today would kill a kid. Captain Planet did the same thing. a drug called Bliss that makes the user happy and all their problems go away, but also makes them reckless and not fear injury or death, and is extremely addictive. Linka's cousin gets addicted and then manages to get her hooked, but she quits after he dies of an overdose. Either the series finale of Alf in which Alf is captured by the government presumably to be experimented on, or the series finale of Dinosaurs in which the entire civilization is destroyed. I was about to post the Dinosaurs one. The finale was them just staring out the window at snow, and while I don't think they knew what was going to happen, we sure as duck did. I actually have watched some of this with my kiddo not long ago. Being stuck at home, we watched some more, including the finale. The episode ends with them stuck at home not sure of what's to come, but the dad reassuring the family it would be fine. The last line was something like dinosaurs have been on this earth for 150 million years. It's not like we're going to just disappear, before staring longingly at uncertainty as the credits roll. Made the wife and I shoot each other an uneasy glance, considering current circumstances. Today on videos that you shouldn't watch with your family during the COVID-19 quarantine. Not really as messed up as a lot of these, but still creepy. That episode of Tom and Jerry, where Tom gets depressed and sits on a railroad track, waiting for a train to come. Then Jerry comes to join him sitting down. The episode cuts to black and ends, and it never mentions it after that. Strange. I got another one. T&J episode in which Tom dies and goes to heaven, but he is not allowed in cause he's been an asshole to Jerry. He is given a time limit for Jerry to forgive him, or he will go to hell. While he is up in heaven, trying to get in, a dripping wet sack of something comes rolling in. It unties and out come a bunch of kittens, straight on through the pearly gates. I know I saw it as a kid, and it didn't even register with me. As an adult, my jaw dropped because, holy shit, what the actual duck, man. Apparently, before spaying and neutering there was a real puppy/kitten problem. I've read that chucking a sackful into a waterway was a common solution. It was a different world. My dad, who is almost 80 years old, almost drowned as a kid trying to save a litter of kittens his father bagged and tossed into a creek. Speaking from personal experience, it was when the Watergate hearings replaced my usual after-school helping of Batman. And it went on for months. Did you watch it thinking Batman was gonna come out and win them the case? I remember sitting on the floor in front of the TV watching all those old men arguing and acting angry. I could not figure out what they were doing that was more important than my Batman fix. I'm sure I asked my mom every day when they would be done, but I clearly remember her answering me at least once that it would probably be months. SMH. Suppy sales in 1965. 4.0. New Year's Day incident. Edit. On January 1st, 1965, miffed at having to work on the holiday, Sales ended his live broadcast by encouraging his young viewers to tiptoe into their still sleeping parents' bedrooms and remove those funny green pieces of paper with pictures of US presidents from their pants and pocketbooks. Put them in an envelope and mail them to me, Suppy instructed the children. 12. Several days later, substantial amounts of money had begun arriving in the mail. Sales stated that the total amount received was in the thousands of dollars, but qualified that by stating that much of that was in play money. 13. Sales said he had been joking and that whatever real money had been sent would be donated to charity, but as parents' complaints increased, WNEW's management suspended Sales for 2 weeks. 14. This perfectly illustrates an important lesson for all businesses out there. Don't f around the people you hire to be creative. Megatron executing Ironhide by shooting him in the head point blank as he crawled along the floor in Transformers the movie in 1986. All of TFTM was pretty much a WTF thing. Kids had gone through 2 seasons of the show with these guys, and established media had made the Autobots pretty much invincible. There was an entire episode where Prime is dismembered, for Christ's sakes. And then all of a sudden the movie comes along and kills off a 1/3 of the cast in the opening act. Ike. It pissed parents off, who wrote and called to Hasbro in droves. This ultimately led to the decision to air the G.I. Joe movie as a television film, and to save Duke was originally slated to die. The decision to bring Prime back to the cartoon was made in 87, but only 5 episodes featuring Prime would air before the American conclusion of the series. movie rather than TV show. But if I think of that's really dark for kids, my mind always jumps to Clayton's death at the end of Tarzan. Dude accidentally hanging himself with a vine is pretty dark. I mean, Clayton was also basically an allegory for slavery and genocide with his obsession with killing rare specimens and the way he caged up all Tarzan's family and put them on boats to be shipped back to England. So yeah, dark end to a dark story, or just straight up poaching and having no empathy towards it. There was an episode of SpongeBob where Squidward got brain damage and thought he was a baby. Then the rest of the episode is just SpongeBob and Patrick throwing him about and shit. New SpongeBob is just plain sadistic at times. Who could forget when Mr. Krabs did a panty raid on his own mom? Art thou feeling it now, Mr. Krabs? Can you feel it now, Mr. Krabs? I can totally hear this in SpongeBob's goofy ass voice. This made me lol. Thank you. That episode of The Simpsons where Homer's mum comes back after years of being absent, only to have to go on the run again. Homer crying and running after the car still haunts me today. Also from another Simpsons episode, there was a short clip where Homer took a picture of himself every day for 20 years or something similar. You watch him go from a happy toddler, then watching his parents argue in the background. The house starts falling apart. His father Abe looks depressed. It goes into his teen years, and he starts drinking and drinking. He's now depressed. Honestly, I think they should have won an award for that. It was like a work of art. Absolutely heartbreaking yet beautiful. As a child, I remember being fairly traumatized over a series called David the Gnome where he and his wife reach 400 and die together in the finale. They actually become cherry trees intertwined together in the next plane. I remember trying to explain to my mother why I was crying so hard watching the TV, but she didn't get it. There is an episode of Scooby-Doo, one of the ones with Scooby, Shaggy and Scrappy only, where they are being chased around a pyramid by a mummy and they beat him by unraveling him. But then when they are leaving they turn round and footsteps are following them in the sand. They run away, footsteps return to the pyramid, and then the episode ends. Only example in classic Scooby I think where the monster was real. Fair to say I've been scared of mummies ever since I'm in my 20s. Honestly, one of my favorite things about the movies was that the monster was always real. Man, that Cajun Cat People one was insane. Zombie Island. That was my favorite one when I was little. It's on Netflix now. Edit. I'm starting to wonder WTF was wrong with me as a child. That Zombie Island was my favorite movie after seeing your responses. Other favorites as mentioned in comments are Space Invaders and Witch's Ghost. Not exactly on the children's show itself, but about 20 years ago during a midday episode of the Spider-Man cartoon, the news broke in to cover a live high-speed chase that ended in a standoff on a popular Los Angeles freeway. The suspect abruptly blew the top of his own head off with a rifle on live television. The top of his head literally flapped open like can of SpaghettiOs. Camera caught everything. I assure you, kids watching that were never the same. The Dark Crystal, full of complete nightmare fuel. I can only assume it got a G rating, is because someone said, oh, look, it's Henson and his puppet things, that must be for kids. The astronomer slash witch slash guru getting burnt to death. The noise the Skeksis make. The giant cockroach army, it's not for kids. The scene where the podling gets his life energy drained fucked me up when I was little. In the original Powerpuff Girls there was this episode called Buttercrush that I never really forgot. Buttercup sort of got into a relationship with the leader of the Gangrene Gang, but the leader kept on taking advantage of her, and she had no idea. It gets to the point where she ditches her sisters to hang out with him, but he just keeps on using her. Of course at the end she realized what was going on and beat him up, though I guess it really wasn't that dark or anything, but it always made me feel sick inside when I saw it. Maybe it was partly about age difference, but it was the first time I saw a relationship like that in a cartoon. Yeah, that episode is a really good lesson about grooming, even if Ace wasn't actually sexually or romantically interested in her. There is another good episode where a similar theme is touched upon, but in that episode it's Ace and the Gangrene Gang teenagers who get tricked into helping the villainous seducer. She does this weird thing where she uses her sexuality to make them do things for her, but also act like their mommy, giving them some comfort and shit since they're orphans. It's kinda f***ed up. Giving them some comfort and shit since they're orphans. It's kinda